Okay, this is the first part of my revised A to Z project finance. I have to get that out of my mouth. And this is about creating a timeline, which should be the first part of any model, a corporate model, anything. Now, here's how I'm going to do these models. I'm going to try to make them structured, and I'm going to try to make it transparent so it's clear that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to try to be accurate when I can. Okay, but I also want to be flexible, and here's how I want to be flexible. I want to show some of the advanced people how to do some little tricky things that I'm going to be doing, and then I'm going to return to it, but then you can turn off the video. And here's kind of a little thing I find difficult. Most of the stuff about timeline, once you use the edate function and kind of EIS, is pretty simple. And I'm opening our file. This is our file we're going to use. I'm stuttering just a little bit. I'm going to, in the video, go through these, so I'm already violating what I told you what I'm going to do. We're going to put the titles in, and then we'll have a completed exercise file. And then I have an annual file, and I made a practice video, and I didn't make it right. So I'm going to take, here's the task, I'm going to put these days and these hours into the annual file. And I made a mistake. The mistake I made is I didn't make it. I'm going to use a simple year statement underneath the date we set up. So this is kind of how it's going to be finished. Now, if I use a simple year statement and I put Alt-EIS, go to about 45, side tab. Oh, come on, this should be going so much faster, excuse me. And then I'm going to just add a year, okay? And Shift Control R because generic macros is open, or we got that one who, I don't know if they took it, whatever. Now, if I put SUMIF, and I'm going to make a test of this one too. At the very, very end of the video, we'll test if you click on an entire line like this and press F4 and then go to the single year and press F4 twice and then go to the days in the period and click on it without F4, does that take any more time than the kind of typical thing you do? And I'll do the same thing with the SUMIF, and we don't have to do that, of course. We just Control D to copy it down, Shift Control R to copy it across. Now, let me put in some different time periods, and let me make sure that I copied this correctly. Okay, I copied this across. And then you get this one day, this one year. The last time it didn't quite work. You get this 1 year where there's not the correct number of days, and this year happens right before the commercial operation date. Sometimes I've seen it exceed the number of days. I don't know if we can quickly do this. If we make this 40 or something, how does this change? This one, that one worked. That's too bad. 60. Okay, and where? Oh, here's our problem. It again is less, but I'm not going to worry too much. Now, to fix this, you make a fiscal year, and the way you do it, I did it wrong so many times. If you just put month of the COD, you can start with the month of the COD. That's easy. But if you notice, when we go across to our COD, so you're getting kind of a preview of how this whole thing will work. If you go to the COD, what we really want is our month end to be, so we have 12 months in this block. We want our month end to be COD date here, the COD date -1, or there's 35, and then we're going to switch our year in the very next year, and that will be a new year next year. And so our fiscal year will increment in this period, not in this period. And I'm looking for the laziest, easiest way to do that. For me, it's to put an E date. You cannot, here's what you can't do. You can't just go this date -1, because when you do that, if you have something like, I've got to find a 12. Okay. If you have 43 perhaps, then it gives you a month of 0 here, or in that case it should have given you December, and you kind of have to split it between the first 6 months and the last 6 months and all that. So my trick now to do that is to put E date, go to the commercial operation date, and just put -1. And then once you have this, put the month of that date in. Okay, and once you have that month, then you go down and put this month of the prior date in, okay, or the prior date, and you make a tricky little true-false thing. You put, well, let's take the month, and let's take the end of the period for the month, okay, but not take it for this period, excuse me, take the month. Look at me, see, struggling a tiny little bit here. Take it of the prior period. I tried to explain that and make it equal to this thing you have over in the left. And I didn't mean to put a minus. I already put it equal. And then you press Shift-Control-R. And now you make the fiscal year end. Well, let's make the first one just the year. We need to kind of anchor it. And then you put plus this little switch we have, Shift Control to the right of the 1 if you have a kind of keyboard that has US stuff in it. And then we're all okay. They're all 8760 or 8764, 365 or 366. If you don't believe me, maybe we'll put 10 here. I hope you believe me, and then we've got just 1 month, and then followed by some other months. If you put 15, it'll change it a little bit. But we always have, except, of course, you don't care about the first year, obviously. We don't have this problem of just immediately prior to the COD something happening. So that's my little advanced thing. Now, so if you're kind of beginning, don't worry. You saw a little bit of what we're going to go through, and now I'm going to go through the ideas. Now I've shown you this way too much, this horrible city of Detroit. No, it's a beautiful city. It's not, whatever. People are modest there compared to other places around. That's a city that's gone up and down. That's a corporation. A little business in there might be a project. The family's like a corporation. They go up and down. A project has a beginning and an end. You put on your tombstone when you started and when you end. And a project, the big deal about a project compared to a corporation is there might be a strong decline, there might be a weak decline, there might be no decline. I cannot really think of things where the risks go up over time, but perhaps we could think of those. But the risks change. A corporation, risks kind of stay the same. The other thing about a project is there is such a fundamental difference in financing and accounting and debt kind of tabulations before the COD compared to after the COD. Before the COD, we have a cash flow statement. We call a sources and uses statement. We don't have any money. We got to get the money from somewhere. And then we got to pay off that money we borrowed or raised in equity. And then you have all this development period. Here's my dating period, and my commitment fee, and then I have to pay for my daughter's wedding, and then you just pay your bills, and then you end. So you've got to get all these dates right. But the big line is before COD and after COD. Here's kind of the accounting, the cash flow accounting before COD. You see how much money you need in CapEx, development cost, interest during construction, IDC, I don't care, fees, DSRA, they have to fund during the construction period. There could be some working capital you actually have to spend if you have some a pre-commercial cash flow or something like that. And then where'd you get it? You could get it from all sorts of things, including pre-operating cash flow. That's before COD. After COD, you take your revenues, you compute a little EBITDA, you take all the rest of the stuff out, and you see how many dividends you get. And notice down here, the last line is equity, the last line is dividends or equity. You have two cash flow periods that are fundamentally different. You could put all these cash flows together, but you don't really have to do that. So the starting place really for me is to make a little CoD switch when you're doing these timelines. And we're going to go through the whole thing. It's going to be a little bit tedious for people who have done a lot of these things. And you can switch it off, obviously, at any point when you say, this is too simple, okay? And we're not going to, in general, this is a general statement. This is not just due to the timeline. We only need a few functions. Lookup, not index match even. Not VLOOKUP, okay? We use index for sensitivity. We use SUMIF, I've already shown you. Offset only one time. And min-max a lot. That's all we need. Nothing else. Not too many functions. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to put these dates in. I've kind of shown you. We're going to start with the date right before we start the model and go forward and add one and then put an end date in and put a little switch. We'll color it. And let me show you some bad practice. This for me was unbelievable. This was so irritating. I had to spend so much time on this because this big bank it was a tax analysis, and they pay their taxes quarterly, but they have to make a test. I made another video on this. They had to make a test annually. And they put the one statement in quarterly and one in annually, but these annual numbers affect the taxes. How could you put different timelines on the key core part of the model? Here's another unexcusable kind of thing. No documentation of where you get all these switches and flags from, which we're going to, or whatever we call them, switches, flags, masks, whatever you got to be a fancy name. Fancy, well, you got to get a fancy name. Okay, and these long titles that refer to a different sheet, oh my gosh, I'm crying. I shouldn't cry. Here, this is a simpler one where we just put a fixed date. Here, look at this. There's just no need for these long titles. Absolutely no need for these. No need for that. I hope when we go through the exercise you'll see this. This is criminal. This is too easy criminal. Putting a total here, making this monthly, and then having a different sheet that doesn't correspond to this sheet. And if you try to move from one sheet to the other, these totals will appear. And they're all fixed. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're going to have a beginning and ending just like we always do. And pretend you're at a New Year's Eve party. And you're saying, how much money do I not have? Because I lost it. Oh, whatever. And the amount you have at the beginning of the new year is the amount you had last year. And that's the same for a date, any opening balance, okay? Anything you do. You start with the closing balance. That's the theme. You start with the closing balance, not the opening balance. We're going to use the eDate function, okay? I don't know. We're going to use always the beginning of the month. If you use the end of the month, you've got to start testing the EO dates. You want 1/1. You want a month. 1/1/2020. 1/1/2001. Month 1. 1 June 2034. 1 November 2012. 1. So you can always test against the first of the month. That's key. So we're going to go to this. I'm going to start with this no titles. You can go to the titles tab and just kind of fill in with me. You can watch it. You can turn off the video. Try to do everything yourself, which is by far the most preferable thing to do, and that's what we should do now. I showed you I'm going to use the SUMIF. You can use the SUMIF-S. There's a little bit on quarterly things, but the big thing here that I want to point out, the big thing on this slide that I want to point out is that everything is driven, whether you start with, have a pre-COD that's, just a minute. That was my alarm clock. I'm trying to keep things professional. It's going to be hard. I should have switched off the alarm clock. Okay, here's that thing I just talked about where you use the E date -1 and get this fiscal year date correct, and you have to use the prior when you do your little test, your switch, your if test, whatever, no if test, just a switch. You test the month of the prior year against this one, because that's when you have hit the new year. This was the end of the old year. This is when you hit the new year. Okay, we're going to use the SUMIF. We're going to use it with the entire column or row. I'm even going to make a test at the end. So now you do it. The file on the disk on the website. Oops, you don't care about this one. On the website, it's in this area, this building a project finance model. And these PowerPoint slides plus the file will be here. Okay, enough of me spending too much time on this. Okay, so number one, let's insert a few lines. I'm just pressing Shift-Control+. Alt-IR is probably a better way to do it. F4 just continues it. I'm even telling you these silly little shortcuts. So we're going to fill in the dates. I guess I left a few titles here. This is probably I shouldn't. And I'm just going to continue using EDate. And you tab. As soon as you hit the E, you tab. And then you put a comma and go to the months. And I already have this formatted. Shift-Control-3. Shift-Control-1 would give you the number with a decimal 2, Shift-Control-3, Shift-Control-4, blah, blah, blah. Shift-Control-3. You can make your own shortcut too. And then we're going to go to the COD date. That's our big date. We take the financial close date, which is after the development period, put in the number of construction months. I put a little spinner box on. I'm not going to even talk about that. I don't think in any of these videos, because you can look at it in any place else. And then I put the operation. And you know, you could put here the months in the year. I'm not going to do that, because I just want to violate a rule. I like to violate rules. So I'm going to make this thing and put 12 here, because I know I have not ever found a year that doesn't have 12 months. And then we have our decommissioning date. Okay, and then we can get our total number of periods before the COD. Now, normally, it's just going to be the number of months. So normally, we just take this. If you wanted to be a little more elegant, you could put equal days 360. Don't use days. Days, see, 360. And then you can take the start date of the model and go all the way to the commercial operation date. Now, that will give you how many total days there are. If we want the months, we could divide it by 30. But if we want to be really fancy and say we have 30 times how many months we have prior to COD. So we could get even fancier. If you could even, if you put half a month in there, you could get that. Or if for some reason you're doing it bi-monthly, you could get that. So we need that pre-COD date. And then you start with just a period counter. Now, you could even do this without. The reason I have the period counter is because I went, and here's what I hope you do. I hope you go, when you're looking for this generic macro, I regularly kind of fix little things. I find bugs sometimes. So I just download it from here. This is just on the website, okay? Because I don't update, if you got the Google Drive, I update that kind of once a quarter or something like that. So I'm going to press 1. Now, I'm going to go to the EIS. And I was going to make kind of our own. This is, you go to fill and series. So if you have a French computer or something, you have to use that one, and then you get this little thing. But the nice thing about it is if you press Alt-EIS, it's a fastest way to do this. And I'm going to make about 400 periods because I have some monthly construction, some monthly development. I have semi-annual or quarterly. Let's put this in quarterly. Let's make it 3 months. Okay, and we start with that. And the very first thing I do is I want to find out how many periods a pre-COD, because the COD is such the essential thing. Now, if you're really snobbish and saying, I know this, oh, well, I didn't. I'm just doing the things that I didn't. It took me so many years to figure out it's really the COD that's absolutely the key kind of demarcation point. And because I pressed Control-Alt-C with my generic macros open, I'll use a blue one here and a blue one here, and I'm going to include conditional formatting. You cannot sit here and worry about these silly things. Maybe that's too blue, so let's put maybe a little bit of a different color here. That's really important, those colors. Oh my gosh, some people really think it's important. And this 50, this shouldn't have been. Oh, I took this. Oh, just a minute. Oh, I made it when I'm sorry, I did something real fancy. When it comes from the same sheet, I made it green. Oh, well. All right, and then now once we have this, we can put the start of period, which always should be the first of the month, and the end of the period, which doesn't really matter, but you start with the end. So the very, very first thing you do is you take that very first start date and put -1. And I'm thinking my friend in Singapore who fell asleep during these things. So please, if you fall asleep, good. If you need this to go to sleep, that's even better. And then you can type EDate and go, oh, I didn't do the key thing. See, I'm going too quickly. Oh, no, like Napoleon said. He said, dress me slowly because I'm in a hurry. If we put the months in a period, because that's our demarcation point where we change the periodicity of the model. Now we can take, well, I'm going to have monthly during construction and quarterly after construction. So I'm reserving these kind of two columns that I'm moving over. This last one's going to be a little audit column. And then I just say, well, if it's true, then we take the first date. Otherwise, we take the second date and press F4 in both of them. And then you go across, and hopefully I can see it turn to red. And when it turned to red, I have a 3 instead. And I put a somewhere here. I haven't even put a freeze pane in. Yes, I have. It's right here. Okay, Alt-WFF to take it away. Okay, I must have put Alt-WFF here, but I'm going to press Alt-WFF again. If you have a different language, it's going to be a little different. And then I told you we put EDate. I didn't tell you. And then take this one, and take the number of months. So we get a different date. Shift-Control-3, select these two, Shift-Control-R, and we're almost finished, because then I'm also going to put an operation period here. Now, when you do this, I again suggest you always kind of put when it starts and when it ends, and these kind of things where you have both a start and an end date. You use an AND function, and you go up to the start date, always a start date. I'm pressing the F4 key twice. And then I'm going to say it's greater than or equal to, because it starts at the commercial operation. And then I'm pressing the F4 key 3 times. And then I go back to the start date, press the F4 key twice, and then make it less than, not less than or equal, and press the F4 key 3 times. And now I can copy this formula across. And if you want to do something fancier, you can put a count if, and you select the whole thing and put comma true. And then, uh-oh, just a minute. Oh, no. Okay, I made a mistake. Purposely I made the mistake. I forgot to subtract that little 1 at the end. And then I have exactly 120 periods, which I divide by 12 to get in a monthly and multiply it by my 3 or something here. And I check that I really do have the 30 years. Okay? That's the fundamental timeline, and it's got a lot of principles. It's got this transparency principle. It shows you how to use a true-false test. It's got a few little other things. Now, let's kind of continue this. Let's put our days in the period and hours in the period. For ships or something, you really might need the number of hours, dry dock hours, and all that stuff. And then you take the end date minus the start date. Since we subtracted 1, we have to add 1. We get the number of days. And you multiply that by 24, because normally there are 24 hours in a day, with a couple of little exceptions. There are time changes. Okay, and then here's what I did. Okay, and what we need to do now is this same thing. We don't need to do anything. Okay, so what I'm doing now is taking this thing, and I'm going to redo this whole thing. I did it, but this time I'll do it really kind of quickly, because it's kind of ridiculous to do it twice. Okay, Alt-EIS, go to 40, it's the same principle. Take the first date, this is just the year of we could put the start year. Okay, and then I have no title, so it's this year. And by the way, I'm deleting all of this after I'm finished. So you get to do all of this exactly yourself, and then you put equals SUMIF. But we need a year when we do the SUMIF. So good. So down here, let's put and again, if you just put this year. If you just do it like this, and you just put equal year like that, and you just go up to the end date, it doesn't work. So the best way to do this is to then add another thing that says months. We don't really need that. I'm just going to put fiscal year end month. Try to be descriptive with the titles, okay? And we put equal eDate, and you go up to the COD, that's the big date, and you put -1. You get the month just before the COD started. Shift, and then you take this one, you don't need to change the format, and you put month in there. So I'm redoing that, because that very first thing I did was, I think, a tiny little bit complicated, because I don't do it yet enough. And then you put the new fiscal. Let's put it up here. Let's insert a line. New fiscal year. So when we hit a year, it's when the last thing, when the month of the last date, not this date. And I forgot to put our wonderful little month here. Okay, and it's a new fiscal year when the month of the prior fiscal year equals this. Now, if you have F4, if you would have something where your manager says, "Oh no, I need it January 1st" and all that, then I don't know of any good trick. You'd have to put the percentage of the days prior to December and percentage of days after December, and you could do all of that. But this is a way to really kind of present things quickly. Excuse me. Okay, so we put the days, and then we just put, and then I didn't do the last thing. I'm so sorry. Then we take this date, and add, just because 1 is true and false is 0. I didn't tell you that enough. I should have probably done that. So we hit a new year here because we decided February was our fiscal year date. So this is our new year, and then we have a new year, and then we go for 12 months. But as soon as we hit the kind of COD, somewhere around here, oh no, here we hit the COD. Okay, well, just to make things interesting, I did make a mistake. On the very, very first line, I didn't put less than or equal to, and that caused a problem. I seem to be good at making these mistakes for you to explain how things really work. Okay, so now we have 4 quarters. This is quarterly, and then as soon as we hit our fiscal year ends here, then the next one's the new year. And we have 4 of these, and so on and so forth. So our final thing is to put SUMIF as usual. I'm going to use SUMIF S just to be contrary. And if I use SUMIF S, you kind of go the other way. And I have to go back and find out. So we start with the days in the period. And then it says put the criteria range. The criteria range is the year. And you press F4. I found a little bug in Excel, by the way. When you use the SUMIF, sometimes when you put these F4s in twice or 3 times, it doesn't remember them. And you have to do them manually again. I think this one kept. Okay. And then you press Shift down, Control D to copy it. Then we have our hours and our years. And that's an illustration, hopefully, of how the rest of these things will go when I get to circular references and when I get to some of the things that are a little more tricky. It's not going to be quite that easy. All right? I hope to keep them about this long.